it over to Mike. As I mentioned, he did participate this fall semester, or he is participating rather, this fall semester in a service learning class. So Mike, would you mind telling viewers what class you're enrolled in and what your service project entails?
Yeah, so like you said, this fall semester, I'm currently taking the honors seminar for community leadership, and it's honestly a joy. The structure of the course is comprehensive. So there's a hands-on learning component that the student gets to choose, and the in-class work always pertains to that experience. Each homework assignment is designed to help you better understand the real-life experiences that you're having, which I think is really cool. And I couldn't ask for better professors. Erin and Lisa are always prepared to make time for meetings, whether to help figure out an experiential component. So like, what do you want to do for your service learning project? Or just to coach you through the writing process of reflecting on what you're doing in that project. So before I discuss my service learning project, I think it's worth noting that students can explore a plethora of service opportunities. And the professors are prepared to help you find one that pertains to your interests specifically. The only limiting factor is that it has to serve your community. So it's really like the door is wide open. There's so much you could choose to do. So that being said, my service learning project entails, I'm actually working with the Massachusetts Teachers Association, as you can see on this slide, which is a union with the mission of improving the workplace and quality of life of all educational employees. My service role specifically is in the newly formed Teaching Assistant Union at Greater New Bedford VoC Tech. I have the honor of representing my community as co-chairperson of that union. So once again, I just feel really lucky. In my role, I play a major part in reviewing union contracts from other vocational schools in Massachusetts, identifying negotiating team members, scheduling and structuring group meetings, and even verbal union representation at the bargaining table itself.
Can you tell viewers in what way this your service project will make a difference with the organization that you're working with, or potentially within the local community?
Yeah, so we're still in the earlier stages of union work, so it's hard to say exactly what difference my project will make by the end of this academic year. But if everything goes according to plan, I will have used my learning to increase union participation throughout our unit's population, both in terms of quality and efficacy. And when I mean that, I mean how many people are involved in the union work, and how well the union is actually working. A union requires consensus as much as it requires solidarity. And I think those two things are inseparable, but new unions like mine, I think, are prone to relying on the latter. So they're all about solidarity before they actually reach consensus. And I really care about developing the former, the consensus, in a meaningful way. So my goal is to work with my peers to develop a bargaining unit with clear expectations and an equally clear sense of what it's willing to do in the name of meeting those expectations. Knowing what we stand for makes us better at bargaining, which ultimately betters our workplace experience and the educational experience of our students. And using our voice effectively will allow our institutional value to be reflected in our compensation and treatment as employees. So I hope to be making a big difference. And I think that I have the tools to do it thanks to the class.
So what connections have you been able to make so far? So what you're doing for your service project, how do you feel it's connected to what you're learning in the class?
Well, spoilers ahead for anyone that plans on taking the course. Without going too far into the academia of it, the basic structure of the course tackles the 7 C's of social change, the social change model of leadership, I should say. The 7 C's being consciousness of self, congruence, commitment, collaboration, common purpose, controversy with civility, and citizenship. So in essence, practicing all of those things at the same time can really help a group achieve its imagined and desired changes. So for me, while it's both easy to connect, it's both easy and expected to connect all of the C's to my experiential learning. The most important one was common purpose. Like I said, consensus is invaluable to a union, and in understanding the mechanics of common purpose makes reaching consensus much more possible. If not for my in-class learning, I would not have known how to build common purpose in my union. I just would have known that it was important. So I think that's a really interesting and important difference.
And how has your experience impacted your personal and professional development?
Well, I can say with confidence that I'm a far more self-assured and self-actualized person because of this experience. I have a better understanding of what it means to be conscious of oneself rather than self-conscious, and to be congruent with one's own values. And being able to apply that knowledge has already been, and I imagine will continue to be valuable in the context of my project, but it's also spurred an independent personal growth that I'm really proud of. Being aware of what you expect from yourself and whether or not you're meeting those expectations is a really powerful tool. My favorite thing about that kind of growth is how it follows you. It's good to know that because of the learning I've done in this course, I'll be a better and more dependable teammate in my future work.
And what transferable skills? Sometimes we refer to transferable skills as soft skills. So things like communication, teamwork, leadership. What skills do you feel like you've developed so far, and how have you been applying them?
Well, critical thinking is definitely the most likely skill you're going to acquire in this course. My favorite skill to have learned from this class came from an impromptu role-playing activity our professor engaged us in to better understand controversy with civility, one of those C's that I was talking about. Um, so it sounds simple, but it's rare that we're effectively listening to each other in our day-to-day. And I really appreciated my professor, Lisa, giving me the opportunity to practice active listening. Unions deal with some pretty high stakes and serious situations. And she allowed me to practice active listening in the context of a theoretical union member that felt unrepresented within the bargaining unit, which was daunting, but I'm grateful to have practiced making people feel heard when the stakes are high. That unexpected skill aside, this course has a lot to offer, like I said, anyone that's trying to further their capacity for critical thinking. The topics in the text that you read really expect you to do some critical reflection, and the writing assignments encourage a lot of critical inquiry, so asking the right questions. The course moves faster than the union work progresses for me, so I haven't had a ton of opportunities to actively listen to my union teammates yet, but I anticipate that it will be an invaluable skill as we get closer to negotiations and people are more tuned in to their wants and needs.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make, Mike, about when you mentioned active listening and critical thinking, and when we hear them, they do sound simple. But as you mentioned, when we actually try to put them into practice, it can be a bit more challenging, right? And that's why skills like these are so valuable in the workplace. I was also happy that you mentioned that your service learning instructor had you engage in an activity that increased your active listening. So having the opportunity to develop skills like this is what's going to help you stand out to a potential employer someday. Um, a question we often get asked is if taking a class with a service learning component is more difficult or more work, what would you say to your peers?
I would say it depends on what kind of work you expect and how much you enjoy the service learning experience that you've chosen. My experience with the course has been one of quality over quantity. So what I mean when I say that is it's not about how many paragraphs you're writing or how many page numbers you've reached. It's more about experiential authenticity. So putting thought into your reflections about your experiences. And if you do that, excuse me, I don't think you'll feel overworked. I think it's my personal opinion also that volunteerism and community service are rewarding enough to warrant some extra work anyway. So I recommend it.
And before we hand it over to Sarah, who would talk about her experience, what would you say to your peers that are trying to decide if they should enroll in a class here at Bristol with a service learning component to it?
I would say go for it. It's not often that someone has an opportunity to apply their learning in an experiential context, at least at the same time. to be learning and to be experiencing. You become a more well-rounded person when you can thoughtfully apply your learning to your lived experiences. I think it's habit forming for intellectual professionalism. So like you said, standing out to future employers, I mean, but also just in your workplace, when you are an employee, having these skills makes you a better one. It may sound scary to commit to an experiential learning class, but when was the last time you grew from an experience that felt safe? And I think the cool thing about this is no matter how scary it may seem, it is safe. The support systems are built into the course. So if you're feeling unsure about the direction of your project, just talk to Erin. And if you're feeling like you may not be connecting your learning to your experience, just talk to Lisa. And you'll be reassured, and you will definitely come out of this course grateful that you stepped into it.
Mike, you made there several important points of the benefits of doing a class with a service learning component. Not only do you get to help an actual nonprofit through your service project, but as a student, you're gaining a deeper understanding of the course content because you're taking what you're learning in that class and applying it to a real life experience. Also, the skills that you mentioned of active listening, communication, critical thinking, leadership, are all going to be important to take away with you no matter what field you decide to pursue. It's going to make you a stronger professional, all making it easier to transition into your field. So thank you again for your willingness to share with our viewers your experience. I really appreciate it.